Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay and welcome to the Dose of Bliss show. Today I have Mack with me. He is a happiness coach, author, host of Famously Single on E. So I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
We met on Good Morning La La Land. He also hosts Good Morning La La Land, so if you guys have watched my show there, that's where we met. So I have been anticipating this interview for you guys. He has so much information, and today what we're going to be talking about is love, not only in relationships to other people, but within yourself.
Most important one of all, right? Yeah, everything.
I think when people think about love, they think about finding another person.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, but I think people don't realize how you have to find love for yourself. So, you know, everyone tells you have to love yourself first before you love someone else, but I don't think people really understand what that means.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain really what that means?
Oh man, there are so many levels to that. It's such a great question, Lindsay. So I'd say at the lowest level, what it really means is just taking care of yourself, right? It just means that. It means prioritizing yourself above and beyond everyone else. And it sounds so selfish, so people are so uncomfortable with that idea, but I kind of think of it like drowning. Like if you're drowning, you're not taking care of yourself and you're drowning. The last thing you should be really doing is trying to save everybody else around you, because then you'll drown, they'll drown, everybody drowns, right? And so self-love and self-care really is about focusing on prioritizing your own health and happiness and peace and love so that you can be a better, brighter light in the world and you can help people in a much greater way.
And so why do you think that makes a difference in relationships? Because a lot of people would say stuff like that to me. You have to love yourself first. And there are some people who obviously don't love themselves, but there are people who are motivated like me, and I'm like, hey, I feel like I do love myself. What are those people? What's the thing that they're missing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's hard to know what true unconditional self-love feels like unless you've sort of tasted it, and that's why it's always so wonderful to have a parent in your life or a friend or someone who's modeled sort of unconditional love towards you or with respect to you. So it is a little hard. At the end of the day, if you're wondering whether or not you're loving yourself fully and unconditionally, the answer is no, you're not, if you're asking yourself the question still. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, I remember the first relationship I was ever in, my girlfriend said to me, how do you know if you love someone? And I said, I think it's when you stop asking the question, right? It's just so crystal clear. You would never question, for instance, if that wall is brown or white. You just know at the deepest core and recesses of your very being, and you don't ask yourself or question it anymore. So, until you sort of have that experience, it's hard to know whether or not you are being fully, deeply, authentically, unconditionally self-loving. In all likelihood, you're not.
Do you have any tips for people of things they can start doing to be that way?
Yeah, so I'd say the most important thing you can do is probably commit to loving yourself. Like, just if you commit wholeheartedly, that would take you all the way home, right? But people rarely do that.
Yeah.
You don't need any more how-to tips after that commitment. So that's number one. After you do that, there are a couple of things. I mean, at the end of the day, I could sort of cut through all the other tips and get right to the bottom line, and that is, if you can learn to quiet your mind, that is the ultimate experience in unconditional self-love, because from there, your intuition tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing in terms of serving yourself and serving the world. You know what I mean? So there are lots of steps in between. For me, like exercise is really important. When I feel good, I tend to do better in my life. I think more clearly, effectively, efficiently, productively, creatively. I'm a better person, I'm more helpful. And so exercise, of course, is important, but mostly prioritizing happiness, I think. Happiness and self-love are almost synonyms in a way, because they both require you to focus on increasing and cultivating your own self-awareness.
I think that's really good what you said, and I was, looking into a little bit more of what you're saying, and you had an example of yourself where you had everything in the world that people in society would consider as something that makes you happy, and you weren't happy.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a big issue with self-love or where you want to be. It's like society versus self. So can you explain the difference? Like some people are going towards the wrong things.
Yeah. So I would say that to a large extent, if you're focused outside of yourself, you're heading in the wrong direction, particularly if you're looking for happiness. That doesn't mean that you don't spend time in your life pursuing your goals or your dreams or anything like that. But at the end of the day, everything you're looking for in the world is inside of you. Well, it's peace, love, happiness, true abundance, right? And we know that because we see people in everyday life, whether they're celebrities or athletes or very famous and successful entrepreneurs who have everything, but they're like deeply, truly miserable, right? So their pockets are full of money and their hearts are full of misery. And so the challenge and the opportunity there really is to recognize and realize that whatever it is you're looking for in the world, and it doesn't matter what it is, the very essence and source of it lies inside of you all the time. Not only does it lie inside of you, it is you. You know, at the deepest core, we're not our bodies, we're not our minds, we're not our jobs or our job titles, we're not the people who love us or who we love. We are non-physical energy. There is just non-physical energy. We call it spirit or soul or source, but that is essentially what we are. It's not created, it's not destroyed, it can only change form, right? So a realization or recognition of that, the awareness of that in and of itself is peace, love, joy, happiness, and true abundance. But very few people dive deep enough to realize that.
That's true. That actually reminds me of something I love to say is, you know, the energy is always there that you can harness to be happy or to love yourself or to have anything. And this is something actually Marianne Williamson said, but it's always there. Yeah, I love her. You guys have to look her up if you don't know. Like, I live by everything she says. But she says something where the energy is there. It's like you're a lamp. The energy is there, but if your lamp's not plugged in, the light's not going to turn on. So we have to plug ourselves in to that love and that energy that's already surrounding us. But a lot of people, you know, they're just not plugged in, so the light's off.
It's so true. And I would say, and I love the way she says that. She says it so eloquently. And I would say it even a little differently, which is you're always plugged in. You're just not aware that you're plugged in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You're always plugged in. I mean, essentially, you are one with that source of all good in the world, of happiness and peace and love. And you know that because you have experiences of peace and love and happiness all the time, right? In tiny little micro moments, but never enough really to make you fully, totally, completely fulfilled and content. And so you're always plugged into source. You're always plugged into peace, love, happiness, and true abundance. And the question is, are you in recognition of that? Or are you so distracted with what's going on in the world or other people's lives or your own mind that you don't get to experience it on a consistent daily basis?
Yeah, exactly. And can you explain to people what you can do to realize that you're maybe being distracted by something? Because I think I call it like being attracted to shiny things. Yeah. And I think it's fine to like I'm wearing shiny things. I like shiny things, but there's like a difference between like your source of happiness coming from a shiny thing.
Yeah. So the one thing I've come to realize is that there's nothing in the world that can make you happy. Lots of things can encourage you to be happy, but nothing in the world, and I mean that quite literally, there's nothing in the world that will make you permanently and persistently happy. Right? We know that by trying that and it not working out. And it is a very seductive world, very shiny objects, very beautiful people, and there's nothing wrong with spending your life enjoying those things. But if your happiness depends on you accessing or owning those things, then of course you're in a bit of a conundrum, right? So you don't want to be in that place. So I think part of the experience for me has been just spending more and more time alone and getting comfortable in the silence and realizing and recognizing that peace and that happiness that I think will come through the car, and does somewhat seem to come through the car, but never lasts, and it never goes as deep as you expect it to, that same peace and happiness exists right here, and I can experience that in my own apartment or my house, sitting in complete silence, if I spend enough time with that, in that. And not only that, but also it sets you up to be a much more attractive or powerful manifester in your life.
Yeah, and that was what was going to bring me to the next one, because, you know, we're talking about finding self-love to not only find love, but find everything you want in your life. But can you explain a little, like, why that attracts people to you? Like, how people, you kind of are like a mirror to that to people, and it just shines.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, I've been lucky enough to have some friends that are very well known, right, and clients that are very well known. And I remember having experience with a particular client of mine, and he was a celebrity, and he was going to a celebrity gifting event. And we were joking because I said, the one person who doesn't need anything else for free, especially is you, right? And he said, yeah, isn't it interesting? When I had nothing, I could get nothing. And now that I feel like I have most everything, I can get almost anything.
Yeah.
And there's something about that energy that's completely resistance-free, right? And so when you know and you're clear and you experience yourself as the source of everything, of all good, there's a non-neediness and a non-desperate, sort of desperate energy in that. And it's very attractive. You know what it's like? It's like the guy or the girl who is just completely, deeply, truly confident in themselves. They don't need anybody. They don't need anything. And everybody wants their attention. Yeah. You know, and we experience that in all areas of our life. I mean, in my life, when I needed help the most, that's when it's been the hardest to get. When I haven't needed help at all, it comes flooding in.
Yeah, it's so true. Right? It's like when you go looking for it, you're like, where is it?
Yeah.
Like you at first you're like, go away. Like there's all those times where you're like, go away. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's all gone now.
Yeah, it's true. It's very much feast or famine. And you can kind of see that. And it's, in lots of ways, the world is actually becoming more of a sort of place of feast and famine. But yeah, it's there's a quote that I love. The quote is something like the loveless in seeking love never find love. Only the loving find love. But the idea is that they're being the very source of it, right? And so the whole point and purpose of that entire conversation really is that you want to the extent that you realize that what you're seeking you already are, you will continue to communicate and express a non-needy energy, and that non-needy energy is infinitely attractive. And we know that even based on science.
Yeah.
Like happy people are rated as more attractive physically. So you can show people pictures of the same person, one smiling shot and one not smiling shot, and everyone will recognize or say the smiling shot of that person makes them 10 times more attractive.
That's so true. And that's what I like to think about is, when you like go to the bar and you see that person and maybe they're not what you would consider as like the best looking person in the room, but they're having the most fun in the room. So you're just like, I want to be around this person. Like you don't even see what they look like anymore. You kind of just are like, wow, that's amazing.
Yes, exactly. That's a great illustration, and that's precisely how it works. And even if that's the only thing that we ever knew, that there was this experience that we had with people or one person, and we noticed that this guy or this girl was the center of attention, and everybody wanted their attention, and they wanted their attention because they were non-needy, right? That person isn't seeking anything from anybody else, right? And so that's one way of describing self-love. It's a non-seeking kind of energy, and a realization, recognition that there's nothing outside of you that can add to what you essentially are.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of to me what you're saying too is if we want to love ourselves and we want to find love, then we need to satisfy like our personal needs to get there.
That's huge. Absolutely, you're right. Because if you don't love yourself, not only can you not receive love, but you can't give it either. Like people don't realize that it's both. Because a person with a negative self-concept seeks out, meaning a person who is not self-loving, they seek out and only can receive information or feedback that confirms their negative self-concept. That's why someone with a negative self-concept, you say, you're so beautiful, and they think in their head, what does this person want from me?
Yeah, there's some people like that.
They're like, how can they possibly say that to me and mean it? They can't mean it. They must be manipulating me or deceiving me. And you see that happen all the time, But the opposite is also true. When you deeply, truly love yourself, everything anybody says is pretty much a compliment in your own head.
Even if they're mean. I'm like that when people are mean to me. I'm just like, they'll be like, even if they're joking me, they'll be like, oh, that's not what I meant. I was making fun of you. And I'll just be like, I just took it.
Totally. And that was a complete, flip of the sort of switch in my life because I hated myself for, decades. And then I just started doing more and more, quote unquote, the work, but it was joyful work. It wasn't painful work. And I remember getting to a place, and actually it was on the set of E, on Famously Single. I'll never forget, I wasn't saying a whole lot. It was mostly the reality stars that were doing most of the talking. And I remember them saying, Rob, you haven't said a whole lot, but we'd like to get to know you a lot more. Like more than anyone else, we'd like to get to know you. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, I don't know. Why do you think it is? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I think part of it is that when I walk into a room, I genuinely feel like everyone loves me and they just don't know how to show me.
That's how I feel too,
right. And they just don't know how to tell me. And it shifts and changes everything, right? You're no longer seeking something from that, and people realize that you're not seeking something from them, and therefore they want to be.
Yeah, it's like that's, I think, something that I live by, that I think people should live by. Instead of thinking, what do these people want from me, or that I'm scared. Like, I feel scared when I'm out sometimes, like no one's going to like me. But instead, I think you should think of it as everybody wants to feel loved. Like me being in this room, I'm going to help these people. Like the quote, my other favorite quote is, we let our own light shine, we unconsciously get permission to do the same.
Boom.
If we...
Another Marianne Williamson.
Yes, Marianne Williamson, you guys have to look her up. I live, it's on my wall. I look at it every day. But it's so true. When you radiate that, people do perceive that and pick up on that. That's probably why we connect, because I brought that up and you're like, oh, that's what I do.
Totally.
And it really, you just try it once and you change your mind frame to that. It makes the biggest difference.
You're absolutely right. And you highlighted something there so critical to recognize, which is that at the end of the day, we can complicate all this. Really, it's seeing the best in yourself. When you see the best in yourself, and the thing about seeing the best in yourself is that it's a master switch. So it's not that you can just see the best in yourself and suddenly you don't see the best in the world or the best in other people. There's just one switch, and that switch is for seeing the best, right?
Yeah.
So when you flip that switch and you make that decision, you see the best in yourself. We call that self-love. You see the best in others, we call that love. You see the best in the world, we call that happiness. But it's the same thing. It's seeing the best, even if that person isn't showing you their best. It's seeing it anyway.
Yeah. seeing it every way, and also creating a boundary, because I think being a nice person and in relationships, you see the best in people, but you also have to create the boundary where you can continue to love yourself, because if you give too much to the other person who doesn't maybe see the best in themselves and they can't do it, you also need to love yourself enough and love them enough to know that they need to necessarily, deal with it on their own and grow at their own pace.
That's a great point. And I would add a caveat to that, because I think it's a profound realization and insight that you just shared. And I would say that, because I've been in that position before, where I had to check myself to see why it was I was giving to that person, right? So the challenge that we often experience is that we have very good hearts and very good intentions, and we're giving to someone because we want to help them in some way. But there's a little bit of flawed premise in there, which essentially is, well, there's a couple of flawed premises. One premise is that I'm giving altruistically without an expectation of reciprocity or reward. And often we don't do that. We actually have a huge expectation of reciprocity and reward. Even if it means we're expecting that person to change their behavior, or we're expecting them to get better or to heal. That's an expectation that, is basically compromising our happiness. The other sort of flawed premise that I sometimes have seen in myself when I have helped from that place is that I think that I'm giving them something that they can't access. And that I'm giving actually from a place of strength for me, and I'm giving because I see weakness in them, right? That they need it somehow. And so I've been careful about that, and I try to only give from the overflow. So if I don't feel really happy and joyful giving, and then the giving itself isn't the gift itself, then I try not to give it all. It has to be a pure, you know what I mean? There are exceptions, we all make exceptions, but.
Yeah, well, there's a time when people actually really need help, and you have to know the difference. But I really like how you said give from the overflow. Can you explain what that actually is? Because I think people don't always think of it that way.
You're so right. And so the way I think about it is I try to imagine or set the intention for myself to be a rain cloud. So like a rain cloud fills itself up with as much water, as much peace and love and joy and bliss and abundance as humanly possible. And then what a rain cloud does is that it indiscriminately and unconditionally showers the entire planet and all the people with that rain. It doesn't discriminate at all, right? It just gives from the overflow. And that showering that the rain cloud does, it does to relieve itself, to unburden itself from the happiness essentially and the joy and the love that it's got, sort of stored up inside. And so ideally, the greatest kind of giving is giving from a place of overflow. It's a luxury, really.
I like how you say it, people usually say it as like a cup being empty. Yes. I like how you see it as a rain cloud, and you have so much you need to let it out versus drain yourself. So we have about just 2 minutes left here. So I wanted to end it on is, what's the biggest thing you want people watching to learn about loving themselves to attract love to themselves?
So you already are that which you seek. It sounds like a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Cliches become cliches for a reason, right? And so the distance, the journey that we're all on, to love ourselves or to find a partner, that is a journey without any distance. There is no distance in that journey. That is the journey between you and you. And at the end of the day, if you're wanting to attract a happy, healthy relationship, you want to become happy and healthy yourself. If you want to love someone else or invite a lover into your life, you need to deepen and cultivate your own self-love. The greatest recognition you can have around that, though, is that you don't have to even build the love or cultivate the self-love. You already are love. Your very existence. If you think about life itself, the whole planet, all life is love. All it does is rotate this little Earth on its axis and revolve it around the sun all day, every day for billions of years, okay? And the sun continues to shine, and none of it asks anything really in return. The heart continues to beat, lungs continue to breathe. Our very essence and our very core is infinite intelligence and life itself. It is love. And if you can come to a recognition that you are love, then you don't even need to love yourself because you are love. And to let go of this idea that you're a mind and that you're a body and all these things, but just tap into that one thing, everything else just unfolds for you very easily and effortlessly. And even if it didn't, you have the ultimate treasure already, which is love and peace and happiness.
I love that. I like just hearing it. I feel radiated love. It feels so good. I'm I wish we could keep talking about it.
Trust me, for years, all I did was drown myself in positive, inspiring messages until I eventually started to sink in.
Yeah, it makes a difference, though. Well, thank you so much for coming. Can you let everyone know where they can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at coachrobmack.com. You can find me on all social media platforms at Rob Mack Official. And you can also find me every weekday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific time on all social media platforms, including Twitch, YouTube, Focus TV, Connect TV, we're everywhere, Apple TV. Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe wherever you're watching it, and you can always binge it on FocusTVNetwork.com. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.